Today's guest is the multi-talented Zia McCabe. You might know her as the bassist and the keyboardist for the band the Dandy Warhols, but what you might not know is she's also a DJ, a real estate investor, and a realtor in Portland, Oregon. We're here to talk about music, as well as how her second income stream helps her play music and not work music, and why pressure to be creative can totally kill your talent.
Your bus and your crew and your people, and you drive to a city, you wake up, you play the show, you get on the bus, you sleep, you wake up, you play another show.
Stick around to learn more about why every musician needs to understand how they too can get into creating passive income and start making non-music money without selling out. Zia, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you. Before we get into it, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. I was born in Battle Ground, Washington. I grew up in a log cabin with music-loving parents. And at the age of 18, I joined the Dandy Warhols with no real prior music experience, just a music fan. And I've been doing that ever since. Let's see, is it the 20th yet? June 20th, in 1 week, will be my 29-year anniversary of playing with the Dandy Warhols.
That is incredible.
Yeah, that's my big, there was the chapter of childhood, and then there's the chapter of Rockstar, and there's sub-chapters in there, but those have been kind of the two major sections of my life until, of course, I brought real estate in a little over 5 years ago.
So have you been touring that entire time that you've been with the Dandy Warhols?
Yeah, I don't think that we're really known for touring as heavily as some artists that just stay out there for months at a time, years at a time. And we had periods of that when the, record cycle comes out and you go tour heavy. But as now that everyone's in their late 40s, early 50s, most of us have kids, we just realize touring is hard on the body. It's disruptive to your home life. It's a sacrifice to go out and choose that as a lifestyle. And so we started really pumping the brakes on how long of a tour we would do and how many tours we would do in a year.
Of the tours that you've done, which has been your favorite, or maybe, what has been your favorite country that you've played?
There is a hands down best tour that's ever existed. It was called The Big Day Out. It's an Australian tour. It doesn't exist anymore. And bands all called it The Big Day Off because they would put you for you're doing Melbourne this weekend. And then all the bands would be in the same hotels. Flaming Lips, Metallica, Black Eyed Peas, Africa Bambaataa, Dandy Warhols, on and on and on. So The Darkness, so many amazing bands, all in the same hotels, running around like absolute, completely unsupervised crazy kids. And they organize it to really, really focus on showing the bands a good time. Because touring, it's insular. You've got your bus and your crew and your people, and you drive to a city, you wake up, you play the show, you get on the bus, you sleep, you wake up, you play another show. So it's got this surreal bubble kind of reality to it, where as the big day out, it was summer vacation. We were with all these other bands. We're eating together. We're staying in the same hotels. We're seeing each other hungover at airports. And so there's just nothing quite like it. So the big day out will always stand out as one of the coolest tours that any band that did it, I think, would agree. So it's a special one. But otherwise, countries, Australia, France, Greece, those stand out as kind of my top three. Australia, France, and Greece.
Noted. Those are all extremely cool places. That's awesome, though. I really love that story. Yeah. On the subject of touring, let's get a little nerdy. What's your go-to battle axe when you go out on the road? What's your go-to instrument that you bring?
Well, if anyone's seen a picture of my office, my stage office, you'll see there's quite a few instruments. My number one machine that I can't live without is my Korg MS-20. And that was a monologue synth that came out of Japan. Korg was a Japanese company. It's a late 70s, early 80s model. So I own 4 of those because they're vintage. So there's always one in the shop, 2 on the road, 1 at home, and they rotate. And because there's nobody's just going to run down and give you another MS-20. And that's what I use for bass. So I play, I'd say 70 to 80, depending on the set list, percent of my bass is on that synth. And then I have a great little 74 vintage Fender short scale that I play bass guitar on, plus some other synths, some Moog, some Roland, some percussion instruments, harmonicas, melodicas. It just sort of grows from there. But the core machine is the Korg MS-20.
I love that. Yeah, I've seen those photos of you and got an amazing setup of so many things going on. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's like a cockpit for psychedelic voyages.
When did you realize with music and everything that you were doing, when did you realize that you might need maybe a side hustle or transition into something else? Was that when touring kind of slowed down a little bit, or can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I always have kind of needed to have a side hustle. And I don't know if that's because I was joining someone else's band and the side hustle made me feel like I had some agency and some independence. So I would either be doing a cigarette girl and like made my own tray and sold cigarettes and candy and stuff at rock shows in town when we first started. So there was always something going on, right? I always needed to make sure I ran the merch for a long time, which I oversee the merch now. But back then I actually like went to the side of the stage and opened the suitcase and sold the shirts. I didn't want my math brain, my business brain. I didn't want that stuff to atrophy, because if you see, musicians living in that bubble, it's just kind of easy to go soft. Your brain just gets a little soft. And I didn't want to lose the good muscles. I feel like I have a fit brain. I wanted to keep my brain fit. But for real estate, it took me about 4 years to decide. But I started seeing, if you're realistic about a career as a musician, you know that like having a 29-year anniversary coming up is extremely rare. That's just not the way the career arc of a musician typically goes. And so about 10 years ago, I was like, look, if we're going to be touring a little less, and the shows aren't going to be getting bigger, which I feel like we'd kind of plateaued at that point, I don't think that this is going to be a reliable income. And I would call us like a middle class band, right? We still have buses. We still play. We headlined the Psych Fest outside of Paris a couple weeks ago. We still have a really nice career, but it's nothing that we're going to be like really getting rich off of. But it does also make enough that if it went away, I couldn't just walk out and make that same money. I'm uneducated. I joined the band at 18. I can weld. Like, what am I going to do? I don't want to go be a welder. I don't want to be a bartender, and I don't want to be a stripper. Not that those jobs haven't crossed my mind many times, or do I have anything against them, but I'm getting a little old to have late night careers like that. And so I thought, what is this little skill set that I have? How does it transfer to any other career? And the list was really short. At one point, I thought I would be like a personal shopper for rich people that wanted to make tax-deductible donations to nonprofits and charities. And I thought that would be really cool. I would vet the different companies and say, well, I think if you put, $5,000 here, $25,000 here, and this is the max you can write off. And I just thought I was basically inventing a huge amount of work with no guaranteed payoff. So real estate was it. That was the only thing on the list. I waited until I was really ready to reach out to my realtor. I didn't know who else to reach out to. She got me the house I live in that you're seeing in 1999. So that she was still in the business seemed cool. And I reached out to her and she connected me with her principal broker, who now plays in my country band and was a touring musician since the 60s. So Steve Russell at Windermere has been, basically my best friend and bandmate through all of this. And I adore him. I didn't interview any other. I didn't understand how it worked. That you go see which office is best for you, which agency, which principal broker. I just went, oh, this is great. I'm going to do this. I've been there ever since. Of course, now post-COVID, I'm in my own office 99% of the time. But that was good. When I reached out to him, he of course welcomed me because they love getting new agents in their office. And he's been helpful. I've been really happy there.
Awesome. Was it difficult to you? Were you touring at the time when you were taking like real estate education, or did it conflict with like band practice or anything like that? Were you able to really balance that out?
It sucked. It super sucked. I hated it. It is the single most boring, tedious, mostly useless thing I have ever done in my life. And I did it on tour. I told Steve what my plan was, and he goes, you should just start now. If this is when you want to have your license by and you're touring, you need to start way sooner than I thought I would need to. So I did my studying. I did it on the tour bus. I would take a quiz before a show and then go take another quiz after the show. I would go to cafes and study with other students in different cities and have, headphones on that had binaural beats that would help my brain like take in the information because everything was so distracting. And I plugged away at it. Sometimes I would like be having a little cry because everyone was partying and having fun. And I'm like, what if this is the last tour ever? And instead I studied and I'm going to regret this. So it took as much self-discipline as I could muster to get all the way through it. And then I came home and I took the test and I got my license. And then it took 1 year before I actually got an offer under contract.
That's interesting. I'd like to understand maybe a little bit more why. Maybe it was like the environment, or maybe because you were balancing a few different things at the same time, or, I know for me, I can relate with you a lot on going from certain types of careers and not knowing then what I wanted to do, and just really taking a look at my skill set. And I too was like, real estate, I think I can apply myself in this way. I've done some business, I know what it's like to talk to various people, and maybe I can put myself out there in this way. So I pursued it. It was exactly the same thing for me. Very difficult to really just study and take that test, because I will tell you, I am not the best test taker. It takes a lot for me to kind of focus on those types of things and really make the time. And I know that was kind of difficult. It can be a struggle when you're a new licensee. If you don't have the proper, maybe mentorship or people around you kind of guiding you, you can feel definitely a little bit lost. Would you say that maybe that's why it took a year to really kind of make things kind of start turning for you?
I don't know exactly why. I mean, the skills that I felt like I had was obviously a sphere. Everyone knows me, right? In Portland, because I'm not just a musician here. I've done activism work. I've done different ways to be part of the community. And I felt like that was going to really help when it came to what I imagine is somebody going, can a rock star really do real estate? Like, her whole job is being creative and playing music and being able to hold your liquor. Like, what are your skills as I just don't know if the immediate respect and confidence is there for artists to switch into something that is a complex transaction, something that does require some trust from the client. And so I wasn't sure if that would be immediate. And so maybe that took a little while for me to get established, but I'm also really good with numbers. I'm really good with hustling and finding creative solutions. Maybe not everyone knew that about me, though. I don't know. I did have buyers. I think also sometimes at the beginning, you get a little bit more of difficult buyers because you're not being... I think the further you get into this industry, you realize it's just as important to vet your clients as it is for your clients to vet you. And so you get people that maybe aren't going to see things through to the finish line. You get people with much, much, much lower budgets typically. So it's just harder to get the offers accepted. So I think it's just a little bit of an uphill at first. But what I decided about it was I'm going to be the little piggy that builds their house out of brick. And so if I don't have clients, I'm going to go into the office every day and I'm going to go through all of my contacts and figure out which ones are in the area and reorganize those. What I did was I sent everybody solar eclipse glasses because that's right when the eclipse was happening. And so that's how I introduced myself. I was really careful to not just jump straight into this, I'm a realtor now branding. I think it's hard to, I think one of the trickiest things is to make cohesive branding between rock and roll and real estate. It's not easy. I didn't want to look like I'd sold out who I really am just to go have this new career. I wanted people to see that like I chose this career because it dovetails with being a musician. And that's what I love about it. I wasn't stopping music and finding what's next. I was finding out how to supplement what I was doing as a musician and you know, add to it with this career. And I don't know. I think that's a little challenging. And of course I would have to leave and go on tour and then you come back and start over. So there were some interruptions, but I thought it was good for me. I walked into being in the Dandy Warhols with no musical education. I was very young and I felt like I won the rock and roll lottery. So to go into real estate and have to work for it a little bit, I think was really good for my ego. I think I had a year to do a ton of character building. And when it finally happened, it was so great. The guy, he calls, I pull over, it's multiple offer situation. And he goes, look, I just want to tell you, we chose your offer. And the reason we chose your offer is because of how well written the offer was. There were similar offers, but you come across as a competent agent that my buyers and myself, my sellers and myself want to work with. And the hardest part of that entire transaction was not telling him or my clients that this was my first transaction. And at the very end, when I finally got to say, like, I've literally never done this before, that agent gave me such a nice boost of confidence. He's like, if this is your first deal, you're going to be great. You're just going to be great at this. And that I was off and running after that.
That's awesome. I mean, I wanted to go back a little bit on something that you had touched on about pretty much marrying being a musician and a real estate agent together, because I hear that a lot with people that are in the music industry or thinking about pursuing a career in real estate. These types of words, selling out comes out quite a bit. They want to avoid coming off that way. And, you know, it can be a very interesting dance that sometimes we have to consider with a lot of this fan base and creatives and stuff like that. How are you able to tie those together now to really get it across that you can absolutely be both?
I just think I waited for the proof to be there. I did transaction after transaction successfully. And I'm really blessed in that I haven't had to do cold calling or a lot of the more traditional ways to build a sphere. I had the sphere. I just needed to get them to see me in a slightly different light. And a lot of those people know my skill set. They know, they've seen me organize massive fundraisers. They've seen me do things way outside of the scope of like silly party Rockstar. So that helped. But I think it was doing good transaction after good transaction. And then you get the referrals because I'm solid and I got people through, you know, massive multiple offer situations, really difficult inspections, making listings that basically need to be almost flipped before you can even put it on the market. And once you do things like that, then your work just speaks for itself. So I just chose to be really patient. And again, I was blessed. The Willamette Week put out a 2-page, it's a local paper. They put out a 2-page article on me bringing real estate into my career repertoire. And that did wonders.
That's awesome.
That really helped.
On to something else, you know, how has real estate changed your financial outlook? First as, you know, a property owner, but now as a realtor that's been quite active and doing more business. How has that really kind of changed for you?
So as it looked like we were going to be working less, we were really blessed. We were on salary all of this time. That has its pluses and minuses. Pluses are, you know how much money you're getting every month. The minus is you tend to fall asleep at the wheel of your business. And so we had a lot of people being very unsupervised with our money. And so along with adding real estate, I also restructured our business so that I could see every single thing that got paid, every single bit that was spent. And I pulled us out of the red a couple times as we made these adjustments. But the timing, we decided to end our salaries and just do payouts when it made sense. Like 2 months before I got my first deal. So it was really lucky that those things did truly dovetail. I mean, it was scary. I had a little bit of savings. I set stuff aside. I made sure I had a buffer, but it was still scary. Dipping into your like emergency savings is scary. And I made it through with only having to make one mortgage payment out of that like savings to get me through. So that was lucky. Once the business for real estate started, I'd say it was about 50% band, 40% real estate, 10% DJing. And that's how it went for a couple of years. And then if you're familiar with the cycle, if you make a record, you promote the record with some touring, and then you eventually go back home and you make another record. So I've been able to have now the business ratio, if we left DJing out of it, that 60-40 trades places every once in a while. Like this year, for example, which is really great because this is a slower year for almost everyone in real estate compared to the just blockbuster last couple of years that we had. We are putting a record out. We're touring more. And so I've got revenue coming from my music. And for the very first time since I got my license, I just got to go do a tour where I chose to not DJ. I had a car accident, so I chose to not DJ, and I was lucky and didn't have any real estate besides some very, check in with a couple lenders, see how these clients are getting ready to buy, or some repairs of people getting ready to sell. Very, very minor stuff. I didn't have to negotiate repairs. I didn't have to write offers. I've had a deal close I think every time I've left town since I got my license. It's just what happens, right? So to go on tour for 2 weeks and 3 weeks and just not even open my computer was a really special treat. But that means less money's coming in from real estate. So I'm really grateful that then more is coming in from rock and roll. So for me, it has been as good as you could possibly imagine. Like, it's exactly what I wanted.
That's an incredible balance. That's a really nice ebb and flow of those two businesses. On to the next subject I really wanted to talk about with you. Are you currently investing in real estate?
So that has been my plan for the last couple of years. I've come really, really close to pulling the trigger on a kind of a variety of situations. I'm obsessed with Bigger Pockets. I listen to every episode. It's been a minute, but I was consistent, like religiously listening to Bigger Pockets. So I felt like there's so many directions that you can go with investing. And I probably have faced a little bit of analysis paralysis, honestly. And I think pulling the trigger on that first one can be kind of intense. But I have kind of 3 irons in the fire right now. One is I live in a cool old 1904 6-bed, 3-bath. And so that's always the landlording I did, was packing this with roommates in the 90s or in the early 2000s to help pay the mortgage. Now it's just me and my daughter, and it's nice and mellow, but I don't have that revenue stream. My side yard is 33 by 22 feet, and it's fenced. So it doesn't touch my backyard, doesn't touch my driveway. I mean, they touch, but they don't. You can block access. I want to put, I'm actually going to look at one tomorrow. I'm going to do about a 28-foot RV there. It's already got the power, the water, the sewer clean out is scheduled. And that will be, it's the perfect size. You can open the awning, roll out some AstroTurf, put a couple pink flamingos, a couple loaner bikes, a little grill and a picnic table. And there's no hotels around here, and the walkability is 100%. It's perfect. You can walk 10 minutes in 3 different directions and be on cute strips of shops and restaurants and boutiques and coffee shops, all the things. So I think it will be, it's almost a no-brainer. And then, 2-3 times a year, I can take the RV out, which is, I think, about how often people really take RVs out. So I'll have it when I want it, but it will be this great little stream of revenue that's not bringing people back into my house, which when you get used to not having roommates, it's an adjustment to have roommates again. So I don't know if I would go that direction.
I wanted to ask on the RV that you're going to be putting on there, I'm assuming you're going to be doing like an Airbnb type thing nightly, not midterm rental, probably a nightly.
Yeah.
What in a perfect situation, like, do numbers look like for you, like out of that? I don't know what the market is like in that area, but what's a decent expectation that you can get from something like that?
Well, I have a girl for this who has managed Airbnbs. So we're getting ready to actually sit down and really map this out rather than fantasy numbers, which, as we know, can be quite different than reality numbers. But I would love to get 1,000 to 3,000 a month coming, depending on the season. I think that's actually a really conservative guess, to just have a vehicle in the side yard that I want for me for personal use, right?
Totally. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really great. And you said you have 2 other potential investment options?
A lot of my business dealings come from, frankly, my lovers. I've sold a house or bought a house for every ex that I think I've had in the last 10 years. I mean, besides like the 2 jerks that I hope I never see again, but the rest that are my friends, they end up being my clients, right? So in this case, it's a little different. I am technically married. This is always fun for people. We separated about 12 years ago. He lives across town. We have an 18-year-old together. We're the most beautiful example of co-parenting that probably exists. He's my absolute best friend. We do road trips. We do everything together. We're so close, but we live across town and that works for us. So he is, he's a VA. Or he's a veteran. So since we're still married, we're like, why don't we just move back in together for a couple of years? I'll rent this house out so we can own or occupy. The only person that can co-borrow for a VA loan is a spouse. So, and we could totally live together fine. We're best friends. So here's our plan. We'll move back in together, be a married couple again for a couple of years until I go on to maybe I move back in here. I don't know. And we'll get a duplex. So we can do a duplex. We can do 0 down. We can get in there, probably a light fixer, and get that going and rent out the one side. So now we've added a couple doors by time. And then at some point, he'll probably move on to the next thing too. And then we'll have 2 doors. And I just think that's such a great, a 0 down. It's just the VA loan is.
Yeah, the VA loan, exactly what you're possibly going to say, is one of the best tools to really get into home ownership and to get into investing. I know that I help a lot of veterans, purchase their first house. They live in it for a year, they move out, and then they're able to kind of repeat that process however many times. I mean, I've run into veterans that think they can only use their VA once. It's however many times, but you have to, of course, abide by certain rules, but it is an amazing tool for people.
I agree. And also, he is renting and he's going to lose this amazing deal of a rental that he's had. And he honestly can't just move back into the rental market. He's priced out. So where he has been this, anomaly, and it's not something he's going to be able to repeat anyway. So this is a way for me to know that somebody I care about is now out of the vulnerable rental market and into homeownership. And so besides me gaining a door, the real motivation was to be like, I care about this person and I want them to not have to worry about rent. Because what we have penciled out as a mortgage is closer to what he's paying now. And so that makes a huge difference for him. And really, as a side note, before I tell you about the other one, which has got some similarities, that has been a huge motivation for me in this industry. Is one of my niches that I can do, is work with artists and creatives. And a lot of these artists and creatives have low self-esteem when it comes to what they're worth, what they deserve, what they can have. They don't even try. And this is a generality, right? But they just think that's not for me. That's for somebody else. That's for the squares. And what's been so thrilling and so rewarding, and what I couldn't have known going in, is going, no, wait, check this out. You can definitely get a house. Watch this. And get you with my savvy lender and start getting your credit in shape and figuring out what they need. Go get a square job for 6 months if that helps. Go get your what is it, your W-9. Go get your regular jobs if that. So what is it going to take? And I will go to barbecues now at one of their houses, and half the people there are people that I've gotten houses for. And that makes me feel so proud that these artists and creative people have that I showed them the path to homeownership all the way until they get to walk inside and be handed the keys. And that just, I live for that.
It is incredible. I could not agree with you more. That's why I'm really so focused on trying to get us together, talking about, how we can help musicians and creatives get into more homes and really educate them on the process, because there's so many that think it's not for them, that think it's not possible because they don't have that standard job or the income or whatever it is. They get discouraged. And some of these people say, well, why would I even buy a house? I'm never home. Rent it out. Store a room with all your stuff. Fill people in there. Hold it for a year. There's so many options out there, and especially now creatively, just like maybe you're talking about with your creative lender, but not even in conventional lending. There's so many ways for people to get into homes, especially the musicians and creatives that I feel are underserved. That's why it's so nice to hear that this is something that you're actively doing and passionate about, just as I am, is trying to get this message out and then trying to help as many of those people get into home ownership and then get into investing right after that. I love it.
Exactly. I mean, I would love to see more scenarios where friends, obviously going in on a property together has risks. And so I'm not saying everybody should go with their bestie and get a duplex, but the ones who that scenario fits, it is an amazing way to get into a property and have a smaller mortgage. I mean, you can split a $500,000 duplex versus a $500,000 house. So now your mortgage is half. It's great. Which brings me to the other one is he's a recent ex. We're working our way back into the friendship space. He has the down payment. He has a little bit of an inheritance that he should really put somewhere instead of spending it slowly. And so he's got the down payment and I've got the credit and the income. So I can do that one as a non-occupy. And he, again, only has to pay his half. And then I rent out the other half. So now I've got 2 doors with no money out of my pocket. All I'm using is my skill set, my credit, my income, and showing these guys how to not have to be renters anymore while adding a door for myself on each property.
That's incredible. That's so creatively, making it work for yourself and for your situation and circumstance in the best way. I love that.
It's win-win. I mean, I'm helping people I care about, and what I'm getting out of it, I'm getting something out of it that I don't want to put the capital in on my own. So.
With all of this real estate stuff that you have going on in various ways, has that been able to create more sustainability for you as a musician, for you to really, have more time to work on those things? What does that kind of look like in balancing those two?
Yes and no. I think what it's changed more than giving me more time, I think that no, I absolutely have way less time. But what it has done is we have this phrase, play music, right? I'm going to go play music. Well, what happens is when it is your livelihood is it doesn't feel like you're playing music. I'm going to go work music. So I'm working music. I wanted to play music again. I was tired of working music. And it's stressful. There's more infighting. Not that I think this band probably fights less than most bands out there, but it does create a little more pressure because if, where's the money coming from? We didn't make enough on merch on this tour. Now what are we going to do? Everyone's stressed out. To take that pressure off for me, to know that my money was coming from somewhere else, that I could just play music more. And I'm not saying being in the Dandy Warhols has switched to a hobby, but it has taken the pressure off. And that I think really helped. As all of us have started to diversify, we're that much happier still being in the band together.
That's really cool to hear.
I think some people might assume I'm a part-time realtor, right? And a part-time musician. For better or worse, I think what it really is 2 full-time jobs. And so that can be, I've definitely gone through times where I've got 5 properties under contract and a tour coming up and how am I going to do it? I have a transaction coordinator now that, of course, really helps.
Thank God.
I think especially the more creative agents out there, my skill set is awesome. I live in constant terror that I am going to drop the ball on some sort of paperwork or deadline. I'm not going to, but the amount of anxiety I carry around worrying that I'm going to make sure that I don't is too much. So just having some other person looking at my checklist, looking at my pipeline, looking at my transaction timeline and saying, where's this document? It's due tomorrow, gives me so much peace of mind. And it is, the fee for a transaction coordinator is nothing when you look at your commission. It is worth every penny.
Totally. Well, and I think you're bringing up a very good point about, delegation and knowing your weaknesses and your strengths very well. A lot of creatives know very much what they're good at and what their talents are, and we're also aware of what they're not. And I think being aware of the fact that for me, I'm the same way. I am not a paper admin organized. I'm not going to lie and tell you that I am. I am not. And I do the same thing, like waking up in the middle of the night thinking I forgot something, and hiring out help, for the type of personalities that we have, having these people being our missing pieces really makes it that much easier, and really makes the career worthwhile. I wanted to ask, before we start to wrap this up, on the subject of time, do you see yourself maybe getting into more of the real estate investing world to kind of buy back more time and getting out of sales eventually? Or is that something that you'll probably always also do? Like, what is that? Is that something that you've thought of?
100%. Anybody that can get their hands on passive income should, because you are making money without putting in hours, and there is only so many hours in the day. Honestly, that I don't have an investment yet, property yet, when it's been a couple years of gearing up for that, has been frustrating to say the least, because I know once you get your first couple doors, it just keeps going. Kind of like getting my first transaction. It took a year, and that actually has helped. I'm like, look, took you a year to get your first transaction. It's going to take you a couple of years to get your first investment property. I'm apparently a slow starter at things, and then stuff really takes off. I think peering into that murky unknown can be pretty daunting. And then once you do it, the fog lifts and you can see exactly what's involved. And so I am still a little bit wandering around in that fog. And I'm, I hope we do this again next year and I get to tell you about all the wonderful properties I've acquired.
Dude, we will. We're going to do it. My question, going kind of into that, with the experience that you've had on what it was like getting started in real estate, the turnover that you had or the time that it took, with what you kind of know now, how would you advise someone that's a creative, someone similar to you? What would you advise them when they're getting into real estate, either as an investor or as a realtor? What is something that you might be able to kind of help them guide in the beginning?
I mean, I think the thing that helped me the most was having good support. I think that people shouldn't take too lightly who they decide, especially as an agent, who is your principal broker going to be? Like, a great point of Steve is he doesn't practice real estate. So, I mean, he's licensed. He could if he wanted to. A lot of principals are out hustling their own deals. Steve is in the office 9 to 5 to support the agents in his office. And that made all the difference. He loves helping. I can go to him for everything. He's actually been great cover for me when I tour. I also that year took every class I could get my hands on. Every single class. I just kept going. It makes the vocabulary start to flow and feel second nature. Each person that's teaching has a slightly different point of view. There's always a little takeaway. I went and did Windermere. I don't know if you've ever done this, but the Ninja Sales course.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Oh my God. When I went into this, I was like, okay, here's the moment where I figure out if I can do real estate or not. Because if this was some corny sale, build your team, lock it down approach, I can't do it. But their whole approach is be an awesome person. Just go be. And if you're a touring musician, I think we all know that we have some really anemic relationships at home because we haven't been in the business of staying home and babysitting our friends' kids and helping them move or paint their room. And so with the touring slowing down, instead of seeing it as an opportunity to get clients, I saw it as an opportunity to fortify the relationships I already had, to see it as this is my job to show it for my friends and be helpful and reestablish myself in the community as a bigger pillar than I was before. And that made it so that I could see real estate as a business of helping people versus a business of sales. And for me, that distinction was really important.
I love that. And I couldn't agree with you more. We really have to, view it that way. And in my perspective, that's kind of the only way I want to do that business. I do not want to be a sales guy and have the whole thing going on. Like, I just cannot. So I love that you view that way. On to our last question that I have for you. If you could have a dream house filled with your favorite musicians, alive or dead, what style of house would it be, and who would you have at your house party?
Oh, it's just a party. These people don't live with me.
They can. I mean, it's really up to you if you want them there.
Because I was thinking about this question earlier, and I was like, you know what? I have such deep imposter syndrome. I am such an insecure musician that there's no way I would have a bunch of famous musicians. I would have a bunch of half okay musicians that love to jam and not judge, so that I wouldn't feel insecure in my own home.
I love that.
If it was just a fun dinner party, I mean, of course, I'm such a huge fan of amazing pool and pool settings, swimming pools. I don't have one in my house. Portland is not a huge swimming pool town, but I do have a fantasy of just the most beautiful outdoor swimming pool setting with the pergolas and just the whole beautifully landscape. So it would be probably, hip-ass, vaulted ceiling, mid-century with, the coolest Mad Men-esque outdoor pool vibes. And, I mean, rock stars, I would have Janis Joplin there. She's a fun party. Tom Petty would be there because I was his favorite Dandy Warhol. I'm trying to think of the people that I've actually met and love. Robert Smith. I would definitely have Robert Smith come. He's a blast. I would get the Love and Rockets there. They're out and touring. They could come to my party. So yeah, I need more chicks though, huh? Oh, Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson would have to be there, even though he's almost 100. He's 90. He's my idol. Willie would be there.
I love that. That is such a good list. And God, I love Robert Smith. I just saw The Cure and he just sounds spectacular still, just so solid.
I was just coming home from tour and I was just a little too tired to get it together, and I have seen him many times, but I regret not going because it wasn't just seeing him. Everybody said it was basically the best concert they'd ever seen.
It's been really good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I have thoroughly enjoyed, talking with you and listening to you, and I really look forward to seeing how this all starts to unfold for you and getting you, seeing you get your investment properties, because you will get them. It's just a matter of, kind of putting it together for sure. I will be right there with you. We will talk next time about the investment properties that we have.
Awesome.
For sure. So where can people find you? Where's the best place for me to direct people to you?
The social media sphere is usually the easiest. Of course, I do have a website that already feels outdated and terrible, but it's A to Zia Real Estate. It's cute. It's fine. But, it's so hard to keep up on that stuff. A to Zia Real Estate, ATOZIA, A to Zia Real Estate. And then, Zia McCabe on the socials.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And I really look forward to doing this again.
Thank you for having me.